Halo, we back. That's funny. Halo. I was just watching something that Brandon Sanderson was talking about older Halo games and stuff like that. He was talking about generational
Classics,
differences, and it was a
but they
very interesting
sucked.
conversation between them. But
Going
um,
back and playing those games are like not that great anymore. I mean, they're still good, but like it was
oh,
just
you were
for its
mad into
time.
Halo. You
Yeah,
were,
it was really good.
yeah, you were like one of
Remember
the.
when I kicked the shit out of Powers all the time, and he was so mad because he used to be so good before I started playing with him.
I don't remember.
Well,
I remember Cody Powers. Maybe that was earlier
he
than
would
I got
he would
into
p-
it.
he would play at Shays all the time, and then like Lizzie and Rochelle and like a bunch of other random people would be over there.
I don't
So
remember
he
that.
was the best one there by far. And then like I came over and started playing, and
This
then
has
I
to
just
be in high school,
he,
then, right?
he'd like kill me once for every 10 times I'd kill him. It's
This
funny.
is after all the rest
He's
of
so
us were
mad.
playing. Because we played Halo like freshman year of high school, like even in middle school. That's when it was like you, me, and Betch,
Oh
and
yeah,
like the
yeah, yeah.
Woolsey, right? Like that's like, and I
Yeah, I
was
didn't get
absolutely the worst out of all of us. Like you guys were all massively better than me. I was always fodder. But I
yeah,
do remember going later and being able to like shit on like Powers and Shay, and like they were like significantly worse. I probably would
yeah.
have
They
been
were not
them
like
if I didn't get to play with you guys so much.
I was better than I thought I was. They would because fucking I don't really remember these guys too much, but people say they're cocky, like Woolsey and his friend, the really good one that was.
Tyler Smart,
Remember? Yeah, no, his brother.
Brandon
Oh
Smart.
no, yeah, yeah,
Brandon's
yeah,
the older
yeah,
one.
yeah,
Yeah. Be
yeah,
smart.
yeah, yeah, yeah. They were saying how like good they were, and then Woolsey like 1v1 me, and I like beat him, and
Yeah.
he's like, okay, I guess you're good, and he was like super mad about it. It's kind of
Yeah.
funny, but
Because they were like those two before you showed up, those two like were insane. Do you remember that B Smart broke both of his arms? He went over the top of a bicycle because the wheel fell off and he broke both of his arms. Do you remember that
yeah,
he learned to play Halo with his feet?
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow,
He learned to play Halo with his feet.
wow,
Which
he's
is just
fucking bored.
yeah. This is how much they played though, right? Like out of all of us,
Yeah,
like they played non-stop. Meanwhile, like Betch and I were over there like playing N64 like Mario Tennis against each other like crazy.
that was a good game.
It
I
was a
remember that
great
game.
game. It was amazing. We played Mario Tennis, we played Mario Golf on the N64,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah,
Yeah,
to this
remember
day,
that.
I bet he's still pretty jealous that he could never beat me at that, but he could shit on me in Halo. Just
Halo's a
devastated.
classic, man. Damn.
I was bad at
I
Halo,
wish I knew.
but
I wish I knew super jumps when we were playing in high school. Like, you know what I'm talking about?
yeah,
Like
I
the
know exactly
fucking.
what you're talking about.
I wish
Yeah.
I knew how to do all that just to cheese the shit out of people. But
Um, there came a point where that was like all I tried to do as we played a game because me
yeah,
like actively playing against other people like in those lobbies was just a waste of my time. The only way that I was ever gonna get any kills is if I like managed to super jump without anybody seeing with a sniper and was just started being able to like pick people off from up top because I couldn't BXR
yeah,
like nearly as fast as everybody else. Like I was just getting shit on all over the place.
yeah. Shit was fun. Good stuff.
Oh man, talk about a classic. So last time we said we were going to talk about how we practice, but I sort of want we talk for everybody listening. We talk like once a week, would you say?
Yeah, probably once a week.
Outside of
Yeah.
the podcast, like on a phone call that lasts between an hour and 5 hours sometimes. Depends on what we're talking about. But did you change your schedule?
Or as what? What do you mean?
You said when when you texted me earlier, you were like, "Yeah, we had this conversation, and I'm like more organized and blah blah blah." Like
Well, it's like forcing me to be. I'm just like doing everything now.
because of your
It's
class.
not. Well, it's not like things. Like sometimes you have things. You're like, oh, I should do this. I should do this week or this or this. I just fucking do those things now. I'm just like, you know what I mean? Like I'm going to the
Hmm.
gym. I'm fucking taking care of things that need to be taken care of, like fucking like some sort of paperwork or selling some shit or yeah.
Yeah,
Just I don't know. Everything's just a lot more
teach me your ways.
precise, dude.
Sometimes I'm good at that, and sometimes I'm really bad at that.
It was well, I got a 1 when I took Jordan Peterson's personality test on orderly. So this
Oh,
anything anything above that's probably
oh
super
yeah.
beneficial.
Uh, yikes! You'd be a horrible roommate for me. I would hate. I would hate that.
No, I'm pretty orderly when it comes to other people, but like my own life, I mean, that's what it is.
Um,
I'm clean. I'm a clean guy.
No, just like putting things in their same spot. You can't tell by my desk right now because it's an absolute mess, but that's because the spots that all of this stuff are supposed to be in don't exist because I had to move the books out of here so I could paint. But normally it's like my desk is clean and like everything's where it's supposed to be. This is driving
Oh
me
yeah, I don't know about
crazy.
that. Yeah, I got shit.
So you
I mean,
didn't
it's not like
change. You
just
didn't
not
change the
trash. I just
way.
got shit all over my desk, like fucking Rubik's cubes and glasses and stuff. But
Oh no, that drove me crazy. Can't do that. Um, you didn't change the way you were doing work then. You said you got on a schedule, right? I'm gonna have to check it on my phone. I'm gonna have to check exactly what you
um,
said. What you said made me think that we should maybe talk about like what value you found in this, because I can tell you what value I find if I read the message right again. Maybe I inferred this by what our conversation was about. So briefly, our
I don't
like
think I ever said schedule.
you didn't,
Yeah, I'm
but that
looking at it
was
now.
sort of
Okay.
one of the things that was involved in our conversation, right? Was I was like, you can you can grind like mad for short periods of time, but there's super diminishing returns on grinding, right? Like, and we've sort of talked about this where it's like, if I write for more than 2 hours, we talked about that like up that wind in period that like you need to find that 30 minutes before to sort of get in the right headspace. I can only be
Mhm.
in that headspace for so long. Like after a while, I like am just I like wash out of it and then I'm not nearly as effective.
I find the only way that I can actually grind stuff is if I sort of invoke some sort of emotion, usually negative emotion, like
Yikes, bro.
anger or regret or something like that, which probably is more faster way to burn out. But like, I feel like that's the only way I
Hey,
can actually grind stuff. But
people say this. So I have a little bit I think the alternatives are the outlier. Because people say this, like you can't work from there. You can't work from that place where you're like sort of hostile to yourself or aggressive and blah 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 blah. Like I don't know if that's entirely true because that's exactly how like Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, Kobe, everyone talks about. They all had that sort of like I don't give a fuck. I'm gonna be the best. Do whatever it takes. Like I would have mega regrets about this, this, and this, and just sort of they did have that like grindy sort of mindset. So like I just think they're outliers. I think that you can't count on being that person. The average person should count on that leading to burnout.
yeah, because it's like it's super hard to sustain for
Yeah.
sure. And like negative emotions are, I mean, if you're talking about negative emotions, like they weren't happy go lucky. They're like, yo, I'm here to
Yeah.
get the job done. Fuck you.
Yeah.
So like, and like society attaches like this a stigma towards negative emotion, which anger is not a bad thing. It's like a destructive emotion, sure, but like it's not bad
It's
if like channeled in the right
yeah.
direction.
This
Yeah.
is actually something that I was listening to the other day from Dr. K where he was talking about um anger specifically and like his point was like after millennia of evolution, we wouldn't still have anger if it wasn't evolutionarily useful. Right? Like
Yeah.
natural selection, if anger was just this terrible thing that only resulted ever in bad shit, like it would have selected itself out. No one would have it anymore because it wouldn't have been useful, right? Like same way
Well, that's
people
how
are not being born with
Lamborghini
appendixes
and
sometimes. Like
what was it? Who did you fight? Whatever. So like the dude that made Lamborghini got pissed off because his neighbor was making really good tractors or cars or whatever it was. So he's like, fuck you. I'm gonna make something better.
is
So
that
I mean, it
true?
leads to innovation too. Yeah,
I didn't know that about Lamborghini. That's
yeah.
crazy.
I can't remember. It was Ferrari. Yeah, I think it was those two, Lamborghini, Ferrari.
I do know that there are some like car designers. Maybe this is just really popular in the car world. Maybe the kind of person is drawn to that. Um, like the guy who makes Indian motorcycles, right? Was originally like a Harley guy. He was on the Harley design team, but then like got kicked off. So then he went and started like this ultra competitor, which is Indian motorcycles, right? And those are the only two that sort of like really like head to head or cruiser
Yeah. So
sales like in the US or
leads
whatever.
to
Like
it leads to innovation. It leads to competition, which in like a well, I think the problem is that like competition is more. I'm not saying women aren't competitive, but like competition is much more prevalent in like the male sphere of things.
Yeah, maybe.
It's not.
It's
So maybe
different.
it's like a
From
different
what
type
studies have
of.
shown, it's different, right? Like women are aggressive in a different manner. They're aggressive socially, where
Yeah,
men
yeah,
is
yeah.
aggressive physically. But
Like direct competition. I
do
mean,
you think that you're, because I know it would for me, do you think if you're working from emotion that it affects your work?
mm, it depends on what I'm doing. If
Like
it's
in
something that
coding,
requires like,
in
oh
coding.
yeah, it definitely would. Yeah. Well, it's frustrating as fuck because I'm basically learning. It's like, oh, 2 plus 2 is fish today. Tomorrow it's gonna be coconut. Okay.
Okay, so
Fuck you. Like if good.
here's what I mean, right? Like I understand that it can be more frustrating, but would it affect the product?
I wouldn't get anything done.
Would it
Yeah.
affect the finished product?
There would be no finished product
I'm saying
if
like if you work
anger was
however
if I was
long it
driven
takes
by
to finish it.
emotion.
You do finish it. You trigger that regret, that anger, that whatever that you need to sit down and like be focused, which is what you were saying you were needing to do. Right? Like you trigger that in yourself, you sit down, you work through a project. Sure, maybe it takes longer, but you finish this thing. Would whatever you make be affected by that anger or that regret or that
Yes.
whatever? You think it would
I
show up
feel
in the
like
work?
yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't know necessarily in the work, but then again, it's like, well, yeah, it would because it wouldn't be like good work. I feel like for me, anything that has to do with some sort of like strategy or intellectual thought process behind
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is that you're doing, there can't be any emotion involved because it like clouds.
See,
It's
that's
clouds
so.
and then it's like agitation and then off track and like all sorts of
This is maybe the
all
first
sorts
place
of
that we
things.
found that like writing really deviates from coding because your end product is like affected in any of these sort of like qualitative ways.
I don't know. Again, I don't know if it's qualitative, but I don't know. Think I would get it done if I was
Sure, but
coming
you're
from a place of
saying,
anger.
yeah. I mean, you were just going through and saying that like the coding wouldn't be as good because you would be sort of distracted by this thing and blah blah blah. Right? Like what I'm saying is like, sure, maybe not hugely changed in qualitative, but it's changed in any of these qualitative ways. If I were to write from that place, the content would literally change.
Because you're putting emotion into what you're
Correct,
doing.
right? Like exactly.
Yes.
So my headspace as a writer, like if I come in, this is sort of a thing. I like struggle on the days where I have to come in and do like the sort of like hard shit to characters, right? Especially characters that I've like sort of gone with. So if I have a really tough scene where like one of them's dying or like one of them has to like process through some kind of like breakup or something, like some sort of really emotional shit. Like the emotion of that affects me. And I know when I sit down for something, like if I'm like, especially if I don't know what's coming next, if I'm like just writing, I do this a lot more with short stories. I get into a certain headspace and then it's like, brrr, and I like take off. So if I'm like really sad, I write sad stories, right? Like that's just sort of a thing. I didn't think that would happen in coding, but I think this is the first thing that we found that's like actually different.
Yeah. I don't think there would ever be a time where I would. I was kind of thinking about it, like where I would be looking at a piece of coding that I or someone else has written. I was like, wow, this is coming across really aggressive. No,
There's
this is
a,
very passive aggressive coding.
I think his name's Michael Silverblatt. He used to have a radio show. He's like an incredibly good reader. I think I'm getting that right. Um, let me let me Google it and make sure that's right. But he used to have a radio show, and he could like tell what kind of music people were listening to when they wrote things. Yeah, it is. It's Michael Silverblatt. His show's Bookworm. You can find some of it on YouTube if you're interested. Um, yeah, he could like tell like, oh, you were listening to Metallica. It seems like you were listening to Metallica during this section. And like Stephen King would like confirm that. He'd be talking to Stephen King. And Stephen King would be like, yeah, that's crazy. But yeah, that's what I was listening to. I was listening to the Ride the Lightning album during this part. And he'd be like, yeah, I got that vibe. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, what? What a great
It's
reader
pretty
that he can
wild.
like tell. Yeah, I don't freaky. That's like almost a superpower. But um, so I wanna ask something I guess else that's a little bit like this. Writers of almost any kind, right, generate content creatively. Okay, I was starting to think about this. One of the things that you're really getting into is websites, right? Coding for websites.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what the end result will be. I'm not really doing it yet. I'm just kind of learning all the basic shit.
Um, okay. My question, I guess, is like, will there ever be a point where you don't just write, say, like back end code, but you have to deal with a GUI, where you have to deal with designing a user interface for something, where you have to make aesthetic choices?
Probably. Well, and that's kind of what the styling is. Like that's what I'm learning is like there's three parts. Okay, there's two main parts to like a page, which would be like the HTML, which is everything that's on the page, like the text, the pictures, all that shit. And then the buttons, like anything that you see.
Mm-hmm.
But like it's not styled. That would be what like CSS is. I would have to style it and like rearrange it on the page and make certain colors or certain whatever to make it aesthetically appealing. But there's also I don't know because like there's also UI UX programmers, but I don't know what the hell I don't even know what the fuck that is.
But it might
Maybe
be something you have to deal with.
yeah, but I've seen yeah, it's totally different thing because I've seen job offers. I've like been looking at stuff and
Mm-hmm.
postings, and they're like ability to work with UI UX designers and implement. Oh, maybe they're designing it and then I have to implement. Do I have to come up with it? That makes more sense now that I think about it. Like they're designing it the way it should look, and then I have to match that.
So they
Or maybe I
send you
don't come up
like
with that.
a
I probably could come up with that too.
they send you like a Photoshop image of what they want like their header to look like, and then you have to program
Yeah,
the header to look like that.
that would be my guess. But I mean, I could do both. I don't know like
So
I don't know
there's a
like
chance you
the
have to make aesthetic decisions.
yeah.
How do you feel about that?
I like that
Do you?
because well, the way that I look at it is there's like the laws of UX or like the laws of design. It's basically like psychological laws. Like you place things in certain ways or use certain colors to invoke certain emotions or all this. Like I find that interesting. So I could use that. But as far
Sure.
as like
I
the
know
creative
very
side, I'm not
little
sure.
about like logo design, but I like outright laws of graphic design. I would admit that I know nothing.
Yeah, I would
Um,
like that. Which I
I
could
just
use that.
I was just thinking that's pretty funny because that's like another, um, especially as indie authors, right? Like if you indie is independent, right? Same as like an indie musician, right? Like, um, a lot of the time you'll hire your own sort of like book cover designer, especially if you're doing like to Amazon, you're not doing some like small indie publisher working, like, which is almost like doing traditional publishing, but maybe there's less um royalties, or really there's more royalties for you because you're not working with some like mega corporation that has a bunch of admin overhead and a marketing team. They're just publishing the book, right? Sometimes you'll have to work with them on what you want your cover to look like, or you'll literally have to get your own cover designer and tell the cover designer like, this is my idea, blah 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 blah. Some people design their own covers because they like are those freaks that not only can write a whole book but have some sort of artistic skill with their hands and like can like get into Photoshop and do a bunch of cool stuff. And so authors make aesthetic decisions in a book all the time, right? Like, um there's a thing called style. You choose like the point of view that you tell the story from, which is an aesthetic decision. Am I in a character's head? Am I third person? Am I limited or omniscient? Right? Like those are all sort of aesthetic decisions because they change the way the book reads and feels. I never thought until I started thinking about it right now when you were like on a website that was something you were going to have to deal with. But I can totally see almost no matter what you program, eventually you end up on the UI side.
Yeah. Well, I'm like always on the front end of things, but I don't know if I have to come up with the design itself. I
But
will have to implement the design, absolutely, but I don't have to come up.
imagine if you were like making an app. You would have to figure out like what the layout of the app is going to be, right?
Yeah, yeah. That's
That's
part
part of it.
of what I. Mhm.
Yeah, that's part of it right there. Like you're gonna have to make aesthetic decisions. And we've talked about marketing and stuff before, like at a concept level, but I didn't know if you had like if you liked logo design and color theory and I mean that shit
I like the
fascinates me, but I don't know where to start.
I like the I like the psychology of it. I like the way that certain things make people act or react to a page. But as far as like the design of the logo, I don't think I'll be designing logos. I'll probably just be like, oh, here's your logo. I'll put it here because this is the best place for it.
Okay.
Top left corner, make it clickable to take you back to the home page, like every other page in existence does.
Sure. Yep. Exactly where I like
Um,
mine.
yeah. um, but I think I talked about this before. It was like a T chart kind of like skill. I can't remember if we talked about this last time or not, but the way that someone was talking about, well, one of the people that I was following was talking about like when it comes to this type of everything's so deep and so complex that you're not gonna be able to do everything. You should be very, very good at like one or two things, and then kind of like proficient at everything else. So like
Sure.
the T goes like here, and then wherever whatever you're good at just drops down. Like you're good at all these, but then you're just like very good at this or this. You know?
Okay. I mean that makes sense. Um I think writers are generally a little more broad than that. Writers are
Yeah.
probably more like a bell curve, right? Where like they've got a thing that is in the center, but you can't just pick up just that one post, right? Like, how would I put this? Getting good at writing supernatural horror may include elements of gore horror in it, right? Like a monster rips somebody apart. You have to write the gore scene, right? You could write a gore book then that doesn't have a supernatural monster in it. It's just people ripping each other apart. And so those are
Mhm.
two posts that are right next to each other. You might get really good at the like supernatural part and that be what you're known for, but you can write in all of those things sort of next to it, right? And even in a broader sense, like if you write horror, part of writing horror is writing suspense. Right? Like part of writing horror is writing thriller, right? Like you have to a horror book is a page turner. Well, so is a thriller book. So as long as you understand mechanics, you're going to learn all of that. But I will say that like just because you know how to write a horror doesn't mean you're going to be good at writing a romance. Like those things are very far from each other. So maybe writing's a bell curve as like in your T model.
Yeah, it's probably similar because yeah, it's the T is definitely for coding because it's like there's specific skills like JavaScript or CSS or HTML. They're like very
Mhm.
separate from each other. They do connect obviously, but yeah, whereas like with writing, it's like I need to kind of know all this, and then I know this, and then yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like um there's just certain elements of things that are always the same, right? Kurt Vonnegut. Do you know who Kurt Vonnegut is?
Mm-mm.
He's a World War II vet who writes mostly science fiction, but he wrote what's considered an American classic called Slaughterhouse-Five. Um, he has a lecture where he talks about the shapes of stories. And it's really funny because they look like sine waves, right? Or whatever on a board. And he sort of charted it as like degree of suffering is the y-axis and the x-axis is time in the book. And he starts telling these different sorts of like models of a story, and literally every one of them, like in my head I tied them all to fairy tales, right? And it's like girl's mom dies, and so she's sort of knocked down below the x-axis. She starts negative like on the y-axis for suffering, right? And so she starts low, but things can't get that much worse for her. But she's got a nasty family, and her new family's not nice to her. And then but there's this dance coming up, and so but oh, she doesn't get to go to the dance, and then oh, but she gets rescued and goes to the dance, and all of these things are great, and like, and he's just trying these things, and it's just literally you can track, bing, 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 like this is a romance story. This is this kind of romance story. Done. This is an adventure story. Done. This is a hero's journey. Done. And so I get what you're saying that like a hero's journey is not a Greek hero's journey does not necessarily involve a romance. And often doesn't. There's often not like a romantic element to a Greek hero's journey. Right? Like mostly because the Greeks like take guys and send them places, and there are very little women involved whatsoever in their stories. But if you're trying to write that kind of story, like it's very much on the opposite side. Lord of the Rings is that. And there's like 3 named female characters in the whole Lord of the Rings. Right? It's like the girl that Aragorn falls in love with, Galadriel, who's the like other queen of the elves, and then Shelob or whatever, the fucking spider. There are like no other named female characters in the books, I think. Maybe Sam's girl. I don't remember if she's in the books. It's been a really long time. But you know what I'm saying? Like there's no girls there. So there's no real like romance to the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
So if you're writing Lord of the Rings, I wouldn't want Tolkien to try and write like a Daniel Steele book. Daniel Steele writes very like Harlequin romance, like here's a big buff strong guy and here's the girl and they're falling together, and yeah, it's just very much different. But there are things that overlap, right? Like you have to know whatever language you're in, you have to know sentence structure. That's, I think, the part that you're saying. If you know the format of how to code, you just need to learn the specifics of the language. Yes, I'm shooting in the dark here.
Kind of. I mean, there's like certain structure that like code does, but then there's shit that like doesn't make sense too. Like I don't know. I really don't know. At this point, I'm just kind of like learning everything if I can.
I
But, like
can't wait to
sometimes,
revisit some of these topics after your boot camp. Seriously,
yes,
I'm gonna be
it'd be
so
good.
stoked. Did I ever
Because
tell
like
you
sometimes there's
about?
like a certain good.
Did I ever tell you I like had a sort of like writing boot camp that really opened my eyes in a number of ways? Did I ever tell you about when I went to Yellowstone to do like a whole summer writing program?
I don't think so.
Um, so I've been writing. Oh God, I'd already written a book by the time I did this, but that book was really bad. It was unreadable bad. Um, and I'd written and I'd been published in a couple of places just before I went to this. It was like the first couple times that I'd been published, short stories in different places, and then I got accepted into this class and like went to do this thing in Yellowstone, doing a bunch of nature writing. So it wasn't really fiction. It was like writing about Yellowstone for like a bunch of different nature magazines and all this other stuff. Um, and specifically, we had to write poetry. And I got there, and it was actually the poetry part that sort of like like broke a bunch of the expectations that I had from the things that I'd just been teaching myself. Right? Because up until that point, I didn't really have anybody sitting down like on a very regular basis as I was writing something and going like, I see where you're going. This is what's wrong with that idea. I see how you're trying to do this. Here's the thing that's going to trip you up. Like, here's the issue you're going to have 3 pages from now in this essay, like here. And so I just had a bunch of my expectations sort of like either completely broken down or like majorly shifted. And I was there for, I don't know, like 2 weeks or something like that. We were actually in the park doing stuff. And then we spent the rest of the time like doing editing and changing stuff um, outside of that, like when we actually came back to town and we were doing stuff. But yeah, it was sort of like yours, where it was like not very long. Yours is longer, obviously. I think yours is also like, I mean, mine was a dedicated curriculum too, but there was a bunch of like optional things in mine where it was like you can write 6 essays, 5 poems, and this, or 5 essays, 12 poems, right? Like, and you had to like break it up into
Yeah,
this combination.
it's kind of like that. Um, there's like the normal. Okay, so like at the end of the day, you have like a lab or multiple labs sometimes that you need to do. You need to go through and make this program. They call it a program. It's kind of weird, but like I create now. I'm like creating programs, right? Like I need to create a program that does this and returns whenever this is put in, it returns this value or this or gives me this. Um, like I had one where I had like count all the letters of the words and then take the average of the amount of letters, and then that was like the average number of words or letters in word, but whatever.
Okay.
but there's also bonuses on top of that like weren't really covered in the day that you can go on and like do more if you like
You should
are
do all of
advanced
that.
or are learning, which
You should do all
it's
of that.
basically like, yeah, I've been trying to do that, but it's like, dude, they're so hard. But like it comes down to the expectation thing. Is like I thought I'd be able to kind of do this, but it. Okay, I'll give you an example of the latest one. It's like there's a matrices, right? Of like, let's say 100 numbers, and then
Okay.
like there's each line is an array technically, so there's 10. So what you have to do is you have to somehow grab, and then you have to multiply them diagonally.
Okay.
So you have to now somehow grab one and then grab whatever one that you grab, you have to also grab one to the top left and then two to the bottom right, or however you want to do it. So now you have to, whatever. So basically, what it comes down to is you need two, whatever. It just stacks on stacks on stacks. You need two iterations that are
Stacks and
inside.
stacks and
Yeah.
stacks.
Yeah. Two iterations that are inside of each other that grab these from different lines. I'm like, dude, what? Like, it doesn't even,
Huh.
but whatever. Yeah.
Definitely try and do all the bonus stuff though.
Yeah, no, definitely a good idea.
Um,
Yeah. So that was more specific. Try
no,
to
I
keep it
mean,
away from that
like,
because it's like it doesn't really relate to anything. It's more like, yeah,
I get it. Like, I'm trying to think bonus stuff. Bonus stuff on that trip would be that I didn't have to like sit around and talk about. Um, authors have something called style guides, which is like books about the rules of writing. Um, the best example that I have for this is Hemingway wrote with a really particular style, and he probably picked it up from reading like old translations of Hebrew manuscript, like Hebrew religious manuscripts, because when they describe stuff in that, they will say like the ground was hard and unaccepting of a campsite, and that's a big thing there where they go and the leaves falling from the trees were starting to crumble to dust into the tents, and they would do this sort of like repetitive almost rhythmic description of things, and you can find that in Hemingway's style. It's very boom 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 boom, and it gives, especially the way that Hemingway describes things in a very dry manner, the same way that the Hebrew like descriptions were very dry, where it's not these large eloquent words. It's very direct and straightforward, but he hits this and that's where that people get this idea that like Hemingway has this really stern sort of like command of description and language, and why he's always very serious in his right, because this is the stylist. His style helps to give that impression. That's why a lot of the times his characters come across as very serious, because as their descriptions are coming through their eyes, this is what we're getting. Well, style guides will talk about these kinds of things, and they'll talk about like what the benefit of not using adjectives is. This is like a very famous sort of like writing advice thing. It's like, don't use any adjectives. Like if a word ends in ly, just get rid of it. You should be using a better verb. The idea is like he ran quickly versus he sprinted. Right? Like sprinted gives you a much more visual picture than he ran quickly.
yeah, makes
Sprinted is
sense.
just better writing. But you have the same thing from when you were talking about like you could take 10 paragraphs to do this one function, or you could code it better into a shorter sentence. Right?
Yeah, like
Like,
basically using what I would like reference it to would be like punctuation. Like okay, like a block quote, right? Like block quotes are hard
yeah,
if you don't know what the hell you're doing, right? So that's kind of
that's
like
just WordPress, but okay.
what's that?
That's just WordPress, but okay.
Okay. Well, I remember in college, like that was the one thing that they were trying to teach us, like that 2 months, like this is how you use a block quote. Da, 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 da. But anyway, so there's like different techniques, and punctuation is like a huge. They're not necessarily. It's not necessarily called punctuation coding. It's called like comparison operators or like different. But anyway,
Let's
it's
go
like
punctuation.
if you, yeah, well, I mean, it is punctuation. It's like question
Okay.
marks. Like if I use a question mark, it means one thing. If I use two question marks, it means another thing together. Or like
Mm-hmm.
an and symbol. Like and is like a comparison thing. If I use one or two or three, it's like different things. It's like kind of the
Okay.
same idea. Or exclamation marks too.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are a pop.
So like the extra credit was the fact that I had read a bunch of the style guides. I'd basically already done the bonus material way beforehand when I was trying to teach myself. And so I had those things to talk about with the like guides that were there basically. We had a biologist that was there, like a PhD in biology that was there
Mhm.
to talk about the animals and the plants and all the stuff as we were out so that we would have some idea of the technical side of what we were talking about. And then we had a English person there, like a PhD in English to help with the writing side of things. So I could like sit down with the writing side of things and we could talk about Bird by Anne Lamott, right? Like um and then she was sort of able to like change the context of those things. That was the bonus material. I had just already done a bunch of it. So I, like it's not exactly a 1-to-1 for your bonus material. But what I'm saying is like when I did my sort of like boot camp, I got way more out of the bonus material than I did out of the just regular class. That's why I'm telling you to do the bonus material.
Yeah, the bonus material is definitely good. It's hard as fuck.
Yeah.
Absolutely hard as fuck. Yeah. Definitely worth it, I think. I attempt it, but sometimes like even Googling, I have no idea even what I'm looking at. So
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
how do I Google this?
How do I Google what I don't know?
How do I
Using
do what the
search.
do you see my snap? I put a snap up that said I took a picture of the fucking the code. It's like
Yes.
this is what people think. That's
Yes.
exactly how I feel. Like put on those bonuses. It's like
Writers actually do a
exactly
lot
how
of
I feel.
research too, right? I was thinking about this the other day. I just started reading Dan Wells' I'm Not a Serial Killer. Um, this is within like the first 3 pages, so I don't consider it a spoiler. This kid, his family owns a mortuary, and they like have to embalm bodies. And so I'm sure Dan Wells, when he started this thing, didn't know how to embalm a body. And so there's a joke in writer communities where it's like, oh, I hope my FBI agent knows that I'm a writer and not fucking crazy. Because we have to Google things like, what's the process of embalming a body? If you want to write, like even
Yeah, you have to
casually,
be accurate. Yeah.
yeah, even casually about being
Expect
in that environment.
Is that different like if you're making a movie? Because I feel like in movies nothing really makes sense, but as in writing, like everything kind of makes sense.
Um, yes and no. There's some things you can make up in a book. Um, because most people, 90% of your audience like won't get it, right? This happens with like medical things a lot. From what I understand, I'm not a medical doctor, so I like can't call people on this. But from what I understand, like a lot of the things that logically make sense in medical shows are just like impossible, like in reality, right? Where it's just like, oh, this shard of glass like got stuck in this guy's vein. And so like that's the only thing that's sort of like saving him from bleeding out, right? Like, and it's like, sure, that could happen, but like also the odds of it happening are just so astronomically impossible that this is
Dude,
just
you want to hear something astronomically impossible? So me and Powers went to the same. We were in the same like level of dorm. We were in the same like we were like four doors down or some
okay.
shit.
Powers is a guy that we went to high school with.
Yeah, yeah, good
I'm
Powers.
letting everybody.
I
I'm letting
threw
everybody know.
I threw a pair of scissors to him,
Okay.
and it got stuck in his arm.
Oh.
Like no blood, no anything. It was just stuck in his arm.
Huh.
I'm like, is that even possible? He's like walking around with scissors stuck in his arm. He took it out like nothing, no blood, maybe a little, but like it was
Yeah.
what?
If it didn't hit
It's
any sort
wild.
of major like arteries or
It's the wildest thing
veins,
I've ever seen. Yeah,
whatever I think they're called capillaries that are like in your skin. It's probably some of those, but if you didn't hit like anything else, like I can see it just being
like the wildest thing. Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
The weirdest throw that I have ever gotten was actually I think there are two. I was the thrower for one and I was the
Traveling?
receiver for another. It was probably 30 feet apart. I was sitting in this guy's house. We were actually like um I'm not gonna say any names because I don't know if his like parents knew, but I'll tell you who it is after because this was like towards the end of high school. We're in his house and I just ran out of cigarettes and I was like, "Hey, let me get a cigarette." and he pulled one out of his pack and like from 30 feet away, like threw it across the room, and it like tick 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 and just landed perfectly, like right in my lip. And I like didn't know what to do for a second. It's like, what? Okay,
Light
like
that bitch up.
yeah. The other one was probably like 40-foot chicken nugget toss that went straight into somebody's mouth.
Nice.
Unintentionally, they were talking, and I like was a stupid kid and was just like, I'm gonna throw a chicken nugget at somebody, and they were like, blah, 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 right into their mouth, like perfectly as they
It's
were
wild.
talking.
My old roommate one time, we were at the store and he took his self checkout. He's like, "Yo, I want to use that one." We were probably like 25 feet, 30 feet away. He had like this little Gatorade packet and he like threw it. It it went across the scanner, scanned it into the bag. It's like nice,
That
very
beats both
nice.
of mine.
That
I'm
was
so impressed that it
absolutely
scanned it
wild.
because those things are
Yeah,
finicky as shit.
yeah. So that's what we thought
Yeah.
too.
It's like,
Fucking
okay, well,
wild.
cool that it got in the bag, but we'll have to take it out and scan it. Nope, already scanned. That's nuts.
Do it again.
So
Do it
you start
again.
your boot camp, and it's 10 weeks.
9 weeks and a career week. So yeah, technically 10. But
Okay,
the last week's not really anything.
but it starts at 9:30 every night.
Yeah, Monday through Friday.
So is this going to be your morning? You're going to wake up at 7 o'clock at night, start
I
getting
woke up
ready.
at no, I woke up at 2 or 3 today.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just kind of like figuring out, but it felt good. I coded all night. Went to bed at like 6, 7. Woke up at 3. Had shit to do today, so I did it,
Huh.
and then I just kind of if I wanted to go to the gym, I
So
could have. But yeah,
real quick, I don't know if you have this
perfect
issue
schedule by the way.
because I definitely have this issue, especially with the fact that I'm trying to do so many things right now. Right? Like I'm trying to do 3 videos a week on YouTube. I'm not focusing so much on the like quality of the edits for that. I really just want to like boom, 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 boom. It's actually 4 weeks because this is a YouTube thing. This goes on YouTube, but so that's like what my weeknights are. Is like that. I like get home and need to do that, right? And part of this is that I'm not getting enough done at work, so I'm leaving work late. Which then, if I want to go to the gym, then I get out of the gym late. And then it's like today, where it's like we're doing this thing. I should be reading right now. Like I should be doing my evening routine like right now, and then reading. But I'm not going to get to read nearly as much as I normally would because of the fact that we did this. But I was late, right? Which all started because I left work late. But I like need to do all of this. Happened all last week too, where I left work a little late and then I'm a little behind. And so I don't know if you had like a thing like this where like I feel like if there were 26 hours in the day, right? Like if I just had one extra hour, my plans would be perfect. But like I recognize that it's like a fallacy in my thinking where it's like it's not it's not the hours in the day. Like I've scheduled so that I have enough time in the day to do all this shit. It's the way I use my time, which is why I asked you, like, what do you think my screen time is? What do you think my screen time for last week was? Just take a guess.
Per day or all
Hours
week?
per day.
5?
Oh,
Is it
bro.
bad?
Oh, it's so bad.
What?
It's so bad.
You have plenty of time.
I don't know how. Oh, I have plenty of time in my day. Guess. What do you think my average screen time per day is? It's an average
7,
too. I know that
8,
it's
10?
yeah.
How's that possible?
Yeah, I don't
How's that
fucking know.
Because are you like watching shit at work or what?
But it's on a different device. That's the fucking terrifying thing.
How's that
I
possible?
watch. Well, actually, last week I think I watched a lot of stuff on my phone.
Okay, but still,
I think
that's
I
a lot.
watched and listened a lot. That is, it's a lot.
I have
Even
maybe
if
2 hours. Like,
so, for everybody,
that.
my day job is like sort of a mindless numbers thing. It's like data analysis almost.
Basically what I'm gonna do.
No, but it's financial data analysis. Like it's data entry and a bunch of it's just mindless, right? Like it doesn't take any of my creative juice to do that. And so I can like focus on that and listen to something. And so I do that a lot. I'll like focus on that and listen to like a TV show that I've watched before, or I have a hard time doing it with a podcast that I'm like actually trying to listen to that I'm interested in. But I can do some kinds of lectures. So like Dr. K stuff that I can like half pay attention to and pick up a lot of good advice just across it. I can like listen to him. Um depending on the Andrew Huberman podcast, what he's talking about that week, I can listen to him. So I will listen to those things, but technically that's on YouTube where I listen to it. And so it's counting it as like screen time. Right? So it's really
Is that
not
good or
10
bad?
hours, but it's also still 10 hours.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Still a
even
little much.
I have 6 scheduled hours of work a day, I want to say. Maybe it's 7. 9 to 5 plus lunch. 11, 12. 12 to 1. 1 to 5. 2, 3, 4, 5. It's not 8 hours. It's got to be 7 hours. So even if all 7 hours, which isn't all 7 hours, is perfectly within that window, that's not the case. That would still leave 3 hours a day outside of when I'm at work. And I know that it's more than that, right? It's probably more like 4 and 5. Or 4.5, 4.5. And I'm spending 4.5 hours outside of my job.
What are you doing?
I don't know.
Get off that
I don't.
shit, dude.
This is why I said when we talked about process, I'm like, I have to leave my phone on fucking Mars if I want to get anything done.
That's wild. Yeah, like just don't fucking use it. I don't know.
I don't know. I have social media
Are you?
back on my phone because I'm trying to get back into posting on TikTok and stuff.
Mm,
I couldn't find a way to do that without having it on my phone. I think what I really need to do is get back into putting my phone when I get to work, other than my posting times and my like dedicated sort of like, here's your 40 minutes to literally scroll TikTok a day and save sounds so that you can stay current with trends and stuff like that.
yeah. You know the cool thing about my camera is it is my phone, so I can't use it while I'm doing my shit. It's like perfect.
Oh, I like need it because I like have to look stuff up, but I have to use both.
Oh,
Like I'm using one monitor as the screen cap, right? Like one monitor is the actual device that I'm like recording from. So if you guys are watching, like that's why sometimes I'll like switch because I can actually see the same thing on both screens. Like this is our Discord call, and this is the actual like video that people are gonna be able to watch. But no, I didn't know if you had like any particular.
I mean, kind of. On the days where I'm like, on the days or weeks where I'm not like, I don't have anything. I don't have. Did you make your vision board yet? Maybe that's like a
No,
huge thing, dude. I feel like that's when like my brain doesn't really have like a direction or I have really nothing going on. Then like, dude, I don't give a fuck.
I'm
Like,
gonna
I'll
order
just
my cork
go.
boards right now. Actually,
I'll just go. Yeah, like that's what my brain does. Like, I don't give a fuck. Like, who cares? I'll just go do social media shit.
yeah. As soon as we're done with this, I'm gonna do my cork boards. I don't think
I
it's
don't know.
just
Maybe.
that. I think it's that, like I listen to stuff when I'm at the gym. I think it's counting that.
Oh, I did
Um,
listen to the Andrew Huberman thing. Dude, when he says, I still think it's like dopamine hit. I still call it that. Like he says dopamine spike and yada yada yada. I understand what he's saying, but like in my mind, it's still a hit. Depends on
it's
what it is, but
different.
like a lot of things,
It's
it's still a hit.
if you're depleted, you can't get a hit.
This year,
Like that's a major thing that we're like thinking of. Is a lot of people think of dopamine as this like, okay, we're gonna get on a totally different thing. We got to get out of this
we can do
podcast
that next time. Sure.
before we start talking about this kind of stuff that neither of us is an
Yeah, yeah.
expert
This is a
in
good. This is a
remotely.
good another topic, and we'll like incorporate it into whatever. But he did make some pretty good points.
Yeah, I mean Andrew. If you guys don't watch Andrew Huberman's thing or don't listen to Andrew Huberman's podcast, like there's a lot of really practical
Huberman.
lifestyle.
Do I always say Huberman? It's Huberman. Okay. I think I say Huberman.
It might be either. I think I've heard
I
both.
don't
I think when he says it, I don't know. I'll have to listen to the start of the thing because he says the
know.
separate from my teaching at Stanford and I want to say he says Huberman Lab, which is his like scientific lab. It's creating this massive lens flare that's going on there.
I didn't
It's
realize it would
fucking
do that. That's a
crazy.
lighter. I have so much shit on my desk that I just like play with everything, and there's a lighter there. So
Um, no, he's a huge good resource for setting up things, regardless of what you want to do, right? Like I would say that he's a great resource for setting up a positive environment to get that particular goal done. Setting up a lifestyle really to get goals done.
it's good. Yeah,
But
it talked about some really good shit.
I
So.
feel like we didn't have a topic really this time. I feel like we talked
No,
about a little bit of
you kind of did. Like you had something you were started this with. I can't remember exactly what it was, but just kind of like let in. led into everything else.
Sure, if we were talking about whether or not you were okay making aesthetic choices, like I knew I'd been thinking
Oh
about
yeah,
that for a while.
which I
Uh,
didn't like. Which touched on that again. I was wondering why you brought that up. It's because I said that I didn't like the creative side when I was doing the drop shipping shit, doing the advertising stuff.
mhm.
But I think that's totally different. This is like totally different. Cause like I don't know. It is, but it's not. You know what I mean? Like I'm not making my own business. Like if there's something wrong, they'll tell me to fix it.
Yes, I think that's the major. You have a like check stop. You don't have to
Yeah,
be the one to go analyze all the data and be like, is
that's the
my
part that I
marketing
hated.
effective?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. You don't
I
have to
hate it.
do that. I will have to do that with every single book that I do multiple times in a process called beta reading, and yeah,
Oh
it's
man,
the whole thing.
not a fan. I will not help you with that. Just so you don't ask.
I fully anticipate that you'll never read a single book that I write.
I might. If you okay,
Did you ever read Lord of the Rings?
not yeah,
Did you? You read the books?
yes, all three of them.
Oh, okay. Did you like them?
I've read a decent amount of yeah. I've read Ready Player One too. That was a really good book. The Alchemist, I like that shit.
Which Alchemist? There are a few. Are you talking about the
The one where he glass
what's his
seller
name?
at some point. I think
Cole? Andrew Cole?
I like stories or novels or whatever.
Oh, this is a totally different thing. Paulo Colo? I'm butchering that. I know that he's. I want to say South American,
What is the process for
Brazilian.
like when is your book like I'm not interested in proofreading or like drafting or whatever, but like I'll buy it and read it or whatever. I mean like I don't know the process of like when you publish it or do all this shit or yada
We
yada
should talk.
yada.
We'll talk about that at one point in time. What the
Okay.
We'll compare what a start to finish project is like once you've
Okay.
done a start to finish project.
Okay.
Right? When you like sell a start to finish project with somebody, because I feel like right now you don't have a good grasp on like what a start to finish like order for you looks like.
No.
And
I have an idea but
I can
not
tell
a
you,
grasp.
I've been published in a number of ways, right? Like in magazines and in collections and in things like that. Um, I haven't published my own book, but I know enough about the industry from being exposed to it for a while to tell you how any number of things could be published.
Gotcha.
So I can tell you like what the traditional book publishing process looks like. Um,
Tell you what, I'll make you a deal. If you analyze my code for bugs, I will proofread your
I don't want you to proofread anything. I in fact
okay,
don't.
good.
Um,
That's because it wouldn't be beneficial to me for either of us. Either of us, I don't think at all. I don't know
there's
if
a
that's what you're gonna
thing.
say.
This is gonna be the last thing I say before we got to get out of this podcast. There's a thing called beta reading, which you do want average people to read your book. You don't want writers to read your book as a beta reader. Because
Oh,
what a
I'll do
beta
that.
reader is supposed to be doing is like basically sort of like checking for the average user, does this book work? This is what we were talking about before, where like a person who writes code may look at a website and it has all these fancy transitions and all this crazy shit. And they may be like, wow, that's a really technical way to do that. That's really cool. And then the average user may see all that stuff and just be like, why the fuck is there so much going on? Like, I just want to go to the next page. Like, that happens in books too. And like, writers will give
Okay.
you the first advice on like, you could do this
I'll
really
have you
cool
come play
thing.
my blackjack game that I create.
Uh, uh,
I don't know. I'll make some sort of game. I think we're making some sort of game during this boot camp. So
okay. If
I
you
don't
make a
know.
game, I
We'll
will
hold on to
test
that.
it.
We'll hold on to
But
it.
yeah,
And I'll be your beta reader.
I don't know if I would want you to be a beta reader.
Okay.
I don't know if you would like. Yeah, maybe we'd have to see.
Yeah. I mean, whatever you
You
think.
don't really read
It's your
fiction
shit. So
very often anymore.
fiction. Nonfiction is real. Fiction is fake, right? I always get those confused. But,
Nonfiction is not necessarily real. Nonfiction doesn't mean science. We should make that distinction. But yes, fiction is fake. Fiction is made up. Fiction is stories.
Okay.
Nonfiction is like history books or business books or a cookbook or you know what I'm saying?
Sometimes,
Like
sometimes I read fiction. Sometimes, I mean, like if you count Ready Player One or shit like that.
yeah, but when was the last time you did that? Like college?
Oh, like fucking a month and a half ago.
Oh, I didn't know that you had
Yeah,
read fiction that
yeah,
recently.
yeah. No, I still, yeah, I
Okay,
still throw in the
maybe I will
occasional
have you better read then.
fiction here and there.
Um, I don't currently have anything planned that's even remotely like Ready Player One. Ready Player One is science fiction, and while I like have science fiction projects that I've like delved into, I am very much in the contemporary fiction and fantasy fiction like mode right now. But let's get out of here before this
Yeah, I
podcast
do
gets
need to
any
go.
longer than it
Literally
needs to be
right now.
because you got
So,
to go. Yeah. Thanks for stopping by. This has been the Writer's Code, and somebody's going to work. I'm going to bed.
peace.
Peace.
Night.